Hi, it's Michael DiDomenico, publisher of Sleep World magazine. This podcast was adapted from an article that ran in Sleep World magazine. Our AI podcasts are produced using Notebook LM, so they may include some inaccuracies and mispronunciations and are meant for entertainment purposes only. Enjoy.
Into something pretty fascinating in sleep science, histamine's role in wakefulness, and specifically what that means for narcolepsy. Now, as professionals, we all know histamine and allergies, right?
Right, that's the common link. Sneezing, hives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But there's this great article in Sleep World magazine, the January-February 2025 issue by Lisa Spear.
Yeah, I saw that one.
It really highlights its job as a neurotransmitter, promoting wakefulness.
Yeah.
So our mission today is to kind of unpack that.
Understand the significance, yeah. And look at the new treatments coming out, especially for narcolepsy.
Because things are definitely moving fast in hypersomnolence, aren't they?
They really are. Lots of new developments.
Okay, so histamine.
Yeah.
We think allergies, inflammation.
Yeah, that's the traditional view, absolutely. But the exciting part for us is this completely different role in the central nervous system. Specifically, you've got these neurons in the hypothalamus. They produce histamine.
Right, in the hypothalamus. Key sleep-wake area.
Exactly. And they seem to be really central players in keeping us awake.
So it's like this molecule has two jobs, one for allergies and one completely separate for alertness in the brain.
That's a good way to put it, a dual identity. It really depends on where it is and what receptors it hits.
Okay.
And for wakefulness, it's acting on specific brain receptors to, drive arousal, keep you alert.
Which brings us straight to narcolepsy. We know how much this impacts patients' lives.
Oh, definitely.
The article mentions the Stanford data. About 126,000 people in the U.S. It's not a small number.
No, it isn't. And thankfully, as we understand the neurobiology better, we're getting more treatment options finally.
It feels like progress is really accelerating.
It is, because narcolepsy, it's not just sleepiness, right? It's the cataplexy, the disrupted sleep. So moving towards therapies that target the underlying chemistry rather than just masking symptoms, that's a huge step.
Speaking of steps, that FDA approval for pitolisant Wakix back in June 2024 for kids ages 6 and up.
Yeah, that was big news.
The article quotes Dr. Oliver Sumping from Stanford, calling any new option for kids good news. And you get why, given the limited choices.
Absolutely. Treating kids with narcolepsy, it's critical. Think about school, social development.
Right.
We desperately needed more tools. And pitolisant already being approved for adults, first for sleepiness, then cataplexy.
2019 and 2020, yeah.
That laid the groundwork. Made sense to look at it in younger patients.
So pitolisant is different. The article points out it's the only non-scheduled wake-promoting drug for narcolepsy.
Right. That alone is significant for prescribing.
So how does it actually work? What's our current understanding?
Well, the main idea, based on the research so far, is that it boosts the brain's own histamine system.
Oh.
It seems to increase the synthesis and release of histamine. So it's working with the body's natural wakefulness signals.
Okay, so that's different from our usual stimulants. They're more about dopamine, norepinephrine.
Exactly. Different pathway. And that might explain some of the clinical observations.
Like the one from Dr. Nancy Foldvary-Schaefer at Cleveland Clinic. She mentioned patients feel it doesn't have that abrupt on-off feeling, more like a sustained alertness, fewer fluctuations, which could be a big deal for patients day to day.
That smoother profile is potentially a major advantage. Less chance of jitters, anxiety, maybe fewer cardiovascular concerns that sometimes come with traditional stimulants.
And the article mentions minimal abuse risk in studies.
Yeah, the data suggests that. So potentially better tolerability for some, which just gives us more flexibility in tailoring treatment.
It's wild to think about how we even got here, understanding histamine's role. The article brings up encephalitis lethargica.
Ah, the sleepy sickness. Around World War I.
Described by von Economo in 1917, it gave us some early clues, didn't it?
It really did. Kind of indirectly, seeing those patients with lesions, inflammation in the posterior hypothalamus.
And having profound sleep-wake problems.
Exactly. It strongly pointed to that brain region being crucial. Von Economo was the one who proposed it, housed wake-promoting neurons.
And now, fast forward. Research in the last, 15 years?
About that, yeah. Has specifically identified histamine neurons right there in that posterior hypothalamus region.
It's amazing how clinical observation from a century ago connects to modern drug development.
Totally. Dr. Foldvary-Schaefer's quote in the piece really nails it, how this understanding opens up targets for future drugs.
It shows how fundamental research pays off eventually.
Absolutely. And these histamine neurons, they don't just stay in the hypothalamus, they project out.
Where do they go?
All over, really. Cerebral cortex, thalamus, other wake centers. Similar reach to norepinephrine, dopamine, orexin.
So it's part of a larger network.
Definitely. It's a complex interplay, and research is still digging into the precise mechanisms,
Right. We know it's important, but there's still more to learn about exactly how it works. And Dr. Sumping emphasized that understanding pitolisant's unique action and histamine's role means we really need to consider this pathway when treating hypersomnolence.
Precisely. It validates this whole neurochemical pathway as a target. It's not just about one drug. It opens doors for potentially more down the line, maybe combinations or other ways to modulate histamine.
Okay, so shifting gears a bit, the practical side for us prescribing it.
Yeah.
The article had that sidebar on considerations for Pitildon,
Yeah, really important clinical points there. Can't skip those.
like the enzyme interactions. It's a weak CYP3A4 inducer.
Right. Which means it can make some other drugs less effective. The big one being hormonal contraceptives.
Okay, that's a crucial counseling point.
Definitely. And then there's the interaction with strong inhibitors of a different enzyme, CYP2D6.
Like some common antidepressants. Paroxetine, fluoxetine,
Fluoxetine.
Parapian.
Exactly. Taking those with pitolisant can actually increase pitolisant levels, which could mean more side effects.
Got it. Need to watch for that combination.
And then there's the heart rhythm aspect, the QT interval,
Yeah, yes. Potential for prolongation.
which carries a risk of arrhythmias. So it's a no-go for patients with a history of certain heart issues, arrhythmias, low potassium or magnesium, or congenital long QT syndrome.
And the sidebar also warns about using it with other drugs that can prolong the QT interval.
Certain antipsychotics, antiarrhythmics, even some antibiotics fall into that category.
So a thorough medication review is absolutely essential before starting someone on pitolisant.
Paramount. Standard practice, but especially critical here, weighing the benefits against these specific risks and interactions.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. This deep dive into the Sleep World article really underscores histamine's vital role in keeping us awake. It's way more than just allergies.
Absolutely. That's the core takeaway.
And the approval of pitolisant, especially for kids, is a major practical advance for narcolepsy treatment, offering that unique, non-scheduled option.
A really significant development.
Plus, understanding that historical context, like encephalitis lethargica, helps see how we got here. For me, it's that shift appreciating histamine's job in the brain.
Yeah, it's a great example of science translating to the clinic, offering real improvements for patients.
So the final thought for everyone listening, our fellow sleep professionals, thinking about histamine's unique mechanism, different from the usual stimulants, what does that suggest for the future? Could we see novel combination therapies? Or maybe new drug targets tapping into this histamine pathway for even better, more personalized hypersomnolence treatments?
That's the exciting question, isn't it? It feels like there's a lot more potential to explore there. Definitely an area to watch.